What if the reason your wealth keeps slipping through your fingers isn't your job, your mindset, or your home, but your hair? In both Buddhist thought and classical Feng Shui, the hair is not just style. It is the highest point of the body, where heaven's chi meets human consciousness. And what grows from your crown doesn't just reflect your appearance. It channels energy. It reveals clarity. It shapes the way life force rises and how fortune settles. That's why in traditional energetic systems, your hairstyle isn't just aesthetic. It's a form of communication. The way your hair moves, the direction it points, whether it reveals or conceals, these are all cues to the universe. And when those cues are misaligned, the energy around prosperity can quietly disperse, not through misfortune, but through subtle disconnection. You can declutter your space, burn incense, meditate, and read every book on abundance. But if the very top of your body is scattering chi, wealth may arrive only to pass you by. Today, which will look deeper, not at beauty trends, but at energetic intelligence. You'll discover 5 ways your hair might be affecting your financial flow, and how to realign it without changing your identity or style. Small shifts, big resonance. And if this reflection already offers you a new lens to see your own mirror, I invite you gently to support this space. Please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone whose presence you value, and subscribe to New Day Mindfulness. Your presence helps this channel grow, not through algorithms or urgency, but through clarity and care. Let's begin. Section 1, the forehead, your bright hall of fortune. In classical Feng Shui facial reading, the forehead is known as the bright hall, Ming Tang. It is the region just above the eyebrows and beneath the hairline, and it is seen as the landscape of heaven's blessing. The clearer and more open this area appears, the easier it is for a person to access intuitive decision-making, timely opportunities, and guidance from what might be called heavenly energy. In other words, the forehead is not just a patch of skin, it is a gate. And like any gate, it functions best when it's kept visible, welcoming, and unobstructed. Many people don't realize that how we treat this part of our face says something deeper about how we relate to life. Thick bangs that hang across the forehead, entirely shadowing it, may look fashionable. They may even feel protective. But energetically, they cast a veil over the bright hall. The skin no longer receives light. The mind no longer reflects it. The forehead becomes hidden, not just physically, but symbolically. And this has quiet implications for how we think, choose, and connect with the world. In Buddhist frameworks, particularly in the Noble Eightfold Path, the very first factor is right view. Right view is the ability to see things as they are, not clouded by bias, projection, or distortion. It is foundational. Without right view, no amount of effort, practice, or even generosity leads to true liberation. You can imagine then how the forehead, our literal field of forward sight, becomes more than just an aesthetic zone. It is a mirror of cognitive clarity, and when that mirror is hidden, choices are often made in fog. Let's bring this into modern life. Picture a young woman named Sarah. She's a startup founder in her early 30s, bright, driven, intuitive, but often second-guessing herself. She regularly misses out on partnerships. She delays decisions. She hesitates in pitches even when her numbers are strong. Externally, people describe her as smart but guarded. Internally, she feels like there's a ceiling on her clarity, like her mind can't quite catch up with her ambition. Her look is consistent, oversized glasses and a heavy fringe that stops just above her eyes. It's her signature style, but it also subtly reinforces her mental habits. In Feng Shui, that dense veil of hair across the bright hall traps qi. It keeps light from touching the place where heaven meets consciousness. Over time, this obscuration can lead to murky intuition, difficulty trusting oneself, and a low-grade energetic fatigue. Then something shifts. Sarah doesn't go through a massive transformation. No retreat, no career coach. She simply grows her bangs out by ½ an inch, not with the intention of energetic recalibration, but because she got too busy to book her usual haircut. Suddenly, her forehead is more visible. When she looks in the mirror, she sees more of herself, not in the narcissistic sense, but in the spatial sense. Her brow line becomes part of the reflection again. Light touches her skin. Something opens. It's a subtle change, but it reverberates. In meetings, she notices she squints less. Her posture straightens. She feels more seen, but not in a performative way, in an integrated way. Over the next 6 months, her investment decisions become more confident. She takes a chance on a manufacturing partner she would have previously hesitated on, and it yields a major breakthrough in product delivery. The shift isn't just professional, it's internal. She feels less tangled. She describes it like mentally exhaling. Now, was this caused by her changing her hairstyle? Not directly, but the exposure of the forehead allowed light to interact with her facial field again. In Feng Shui terms, this reopened the bright hall. In Buddhist terms, it gave her right view more room to breathe. This story isn't meant to suggest that every person with bangs is clouding their fortune. What it points to is the deeper relationship between facial space and energetic flow. In facial Feng Shui, a bright, smooth forehead is seen as an auspicious sign, especially in the first 30 years of life. It signals promise, access, and divine favor. When it is shadowed, overly furrowed, or chronically covered, it sends a message to the chi of the environment. This person is not ready to receive. Not quite yet. There is a reason ancient scholars, monks, and sages often kept their foreheads uncovered. Even in high mountain monasteries, where the cold made covering necessary, a thin cloth was used, never thick woolen bangs. The forehead was left visible, not for vanity, but because it allowed cosmic energy to enter. It kept the channel between thought and sky open. The symbolism is elegant. The head receives. The body acts. The heart reconciles. When the head is shrouded, receiving becomes blurred. What can we take from this? First, look at your own relationship with your forehead. How do you feel when it's visible? Empowered? Vulnerable? Neutral? There's no right answer, but your response reveals something about how you manage visibility and clarity. Second, consider your hairstyle not just for style, but for energy. If you tend to feel indecisive, confused, or stuck in repetitive thought loops, experiment with opening your forehead. This doesn't mean abandoning your style. It means allowing some part of the bright hall to breathe. Even exposing just 2/3 of the area can create a perceptible shift in focus. Third, use light deliberately. Allow natural light to touch your forehead for a few minutes each morning. Stand by a window. Bow your head slightly. Let sunlight meet skin. This is not a ritual. It is recognition. You are inviting awareness to re-enter the field of sight. Finally, notice how people around you respond. When the forehead is visible, communication often improves. Eye contact becomes easier. There is a subtle increase in mutual respect. This isn't charm, it's coherence. The face is unified, the signal is clear. Buddhist teachings tell us, when the mind sees clearly, the path appears. And in the mirror of our daily grooming, that clarity can begin with something as small as moving a few strands of hair. Your forehead is not just skin, it is your gateway of perception. It is where heaven kisses the human frame. Treat it as such. Let it shine, let it think, let it feel the warmth of day. And if your life feels murky right now, not catastrophic, just subtly off, consider lifting the veil, just a little. Let light back into your bright hall. That is where wealth begins, not in the bank account, but in the clear field of vision that allows wisdom to know what to do next. Section 2. Outward flaring ends. Energy that scatters. There's a subtle moment barely noticeable when someone with chin-length hair turns their head and the strands flip outward. Not just away from their face, but away from the center of their energy. It's elegant, expressive, almost cinematic. And yet, in Feng Shui language, that outward flare is more than a flourish of style. It's a signal of dispersal, a gesture of release. Energy, instead of being gathered and directed inward, begins to scatter like wind catching the edge of a silk curtain and carrying it where it was not intended to go. This isn't metaphorical flourish, it's the logic of form and flow. Feng Shui teaches us that where form moves, qi follows. And the shape of your hair, especially how it curves, lifts, or drops, has a quiet but ongoing influence on how energy is circulated around your face, head, and aura. When hair ends flip outward at the jawline or collarbone, the directionality of energy changes. Instead of circling inward, reinforcing your presence, and cultivating a field of retention, the chi arcs outward. It moves away from the center of your head, which in energetic anatomy is your command point, your place of clarity, self-direction, and intention. So outward flaring hair, while beautiful, acts like a symbolic exhale that never breathes back in. It releases, disperses, and subtly diffuses the stability you may be trying to grow. In Buddhist insight meditation, attention is treated like breath, meant to be gently returned, not thrown out. When thoughts scatter, the practitioner returns to center. But what if the very form surrounding your face is encouraging that scatter, that release, that leakage? Let's take a real-life example. Julia, a freelance editor living in London, had always worn her hair with ends that flipped outward. It gave her a signature look, stylish, a little breezy, somewhat playful. But beneath the image, her financial life was rarely stable. Clients loved her work, but she couldn't seem to hold on to money. Projects came in and quickly evaporated into late payments, scattered expenses, or distractions that pulled her off track. She wasn't irresponsible. She was simply always in motion, always reaching out, giving, spending, accommodating, but never quite anchored. Her posture, too, showed signs of forward-leaning restlessness, as if her energy was constantly trying to catch up with itself. During a casual consultation with a Feng Shui-aware stylist, the topic of her hair shape came up. Instead of flipping the ends outward, the stylist suggested tapering them in slightly, drawing the energy toward the jawline rather than away from it. The change was subtle, barely an inch difference in curl direction, but the symbolic resonance was immediate. Her appearance shifted from open-ended to intentional. Her jawline framed her face more clearly. Her presence became more contained. The shift wasn't magic, but over the next few months, Julia began managing her contracts with more precision. She set clearer boundaries with clients. She started saving a percentage of each invoice before paying anything else. She even began walking with a steadier pace, less frantic, more deliberate. The external styling change reinforced the internal recalibration. This is how energy patterns work, not through superstition, but through subtle reinforcement. When your hair curves away from your face, it mirrors the behavioral tendency to overextend. When it curves inward, it reflects a return, a gathering, a centering. In Feng Shui, this kind of movement is deeply symbolic. Think of how incense smoke behaves when exposed to wind. If the wind is too strong or undirected, the smoke dissipates quickly, lost before it finishes its arc. But when the air is still or the space is contained, the smoke curls inward, spirals, and concentrates. It becomes something you can sit with, observe, contemplate. That's the difference between flared and grounded energy. One is expressive but unsustainable. The other is contained but lasting. We can borrow this analogy when considering the shape of our hair, especially for medium-length cuts. The way the ends fall, whether they lift away from the face or slope toward the body, becomes a kind of energetic punctuation. One suggests release, diffusion, and opening. The other suggests collection, presence, and protection. Let's take this one step deeper. The collarbone and jawline form a kind of energetic shelf in the body. In traditional Chinese energetic anatomy, the area from the ears down to the collarbones is known as the heavenly pillars. It supports the transition between thought and speech, between intention and action. It's also where wealth energy gathers before being expressed. If your hair flares outward at this level, it's almost like lifting the lid off that container. You're allowing things to move out before they have had a chance to settle. This doesn't mean you can never wear a flipped-out hairstyle. It means rather that you should observe when and where it serves you. If you're in a phase of high creativity, performance, or expression, outward motion can be powerful. It moves energy into the world. But if you're in a phase of consolidation, grounding, or wealth cultivation, inward curving styles help anchor chi back toward you. They support containment. They signal the body, hold, not scatter. Another example comes from corporate culture. Executive women, especially in East Asia, often wear styles with clean lines that curve gently inward. Even if they have shoulder-length hair, the visual result is structured, composed, and inward gathering. There's a reason for this. It communicates stability. It helps Qi remain centered around the face, encouraging clarity in speech and presence. This is not accidental. It's form-supporting function. From a Buddhist point of view, this links to the principle of right effort. Right effort is not about force. It's about sustaining what is wholesome and reducing what is distracting. If your appearance is constantly encouraging outward movement, your energy may be overcommitted before your intention is fully formed. Adjusting the directionality of your hair becomes a small act of right form, helping your outer shape reinforce your inner values. So, how might you apply this? If you're someone who frequently wears shoulder-length hair or mid-length cuts, simply observe the movement of your ends. Do they lift? Do they fan outward? Do they feel playful but exhausting over time? Try experimenting. Ask your stylist to create a line that softly turns inward. Not tightly, not rigidly, but gently, like a tide coming home. Let the movement of your hair mirror the movement of your life, from scatter to center, from constant reach to quiet receiving. And if your hair naturally flips outward due to growth pattern or layering, you can still apply this insight. Use a comb and intention in the morning. Gently guide the ends inward, even for a moment. Smooth them toward the collarbone or jawline. This isn't about control. It's about direction. It's about reminding your body you are allowed to return. Your hairstyle doesn't need to be a prison, but it also shouldn't be an open window for all your energy to leak out of. Let it be a gate. Let it frame your face the way a garden frames a shrine, respectfully, beautifully, inwardly. Let curls curve like water, returning to its source. And above all, let your outer shape begin to hold what you have worked so hard to call in. Section 3. Covered ears. Disconnected from opportunity. In classical Chinese medicine, Buddhist iconography, and Feng Shui observation, the ears are not simply receptors of sound. They are vessels, gateways, points of reception for energy, information, guidance, and karmic clues. In the 5-element framework, the ears belong to the water element, associated with intuition, depth, memory, and the unseen. In Buddhist traditions, the image of the long-eared sage is not an accident. It reflects the idea that spiritual maturity includes the ability to listen, not just to others, but to life itself. So what happens when those receivers are blocked? When the ears are visually or physically covered by thick hair, oversized headphones, scarves pulled high around the head, there is a subtle but persistent message being sent. Not now, I'm not listening. And though most people would never say that aloud, their styling choices say it symbolically. In energetic terms, covered ears muffle input. They reduce receptivity. And in the context of financial growth, that matters more than people realize. Because in Feng Shui, wealth isn't just what you accumulate. It's what you are able to recognize, to see, to welcome. And often, opportunity does not announce itself with fanfare. It whispers. It arrives through tone, nuance, and timing. When your energetic posture says, "I'm closed," those whispers move elsewhere. It's not punishment, it's dispersion. Qi flows to what is open, not what is merely available, but what is perceiving. The Buddhist Vinaya texts offer this line, "The teachings arrive through the unexpected voice." This is more than a spiritual metaphor. It reflects the belief that growth often comes through channels you did not expect. A stranger's question, a child's comment, a mistake that reveals a new path. And to catch those messages, your field must be receptive. Your ears, quite literally, must not be hidden. This is not about superstition, it's about symbolism. Imagine someone walking into a room with both ears completely covered by hair, draped down with no space between the cheek and shoulder. What is the posture? It's visually insular, inward, detached from the periphery. That doesn't mean they are antisocial, but it communicates something to the room, an energetic bubble that says, "I'm not tuned outward right now." Over time, that posture affects what comes your way. People don't approach, ideas don't land, feedback isn't offered. And wealth, at least in its subtle forms, circles elsewhere. Let's ground this in a real-world story. Rebecca was a financial analyst in a tech firm in Singapore. She was smart, reliable, and quiet. Very good with systems, always on time, but she rarely spoke up, rarely asked for raises, rarely challenged inefficiencies in the teams she supported. Her performance was consistent, but her career was not rising. She wore her hair long, thick, and straight. Every day it hung evenly on both sides of her face, completely covering her ears. She rarely tucked it behind, even when typing or in meetings. It was her comfort zone, her self-described armor. And while it was flattering in photographs, it created a subtle energetic barrier between her and the environment. During her annual review, her manager said something that struck her deeply. "You always seem a little closed off. It's hard to read what you want." That comment stayed with her, not because it was critical, but because it echoed what she felt but hadn't named. She didn't change her job. She didn't go on a retreat. She did one thing: she began tucking her hair behind her ears during the workday. The shift was modest, but the effects were real. Colleagues began including her in more casual conversations. She started noticing dynamics she had tuned out before: subtle power plays, future opportunities, interpersonal politics that previously flew past her. Most surprisingly, she felt herself thinking more boldly. Not louder, but clearer. Within a year, she asked for a strategic role in a newly formed division and got it. She later said, "I always thought I was just a back-of-the-room kind of person. But really, I had just stopped listening to the front of the room." This is what happens when symbolic habits change. The shift isn't magic, it's momentum. In Buddhist ethics, there is a principle called yoniso manasikara, wise attention. It means directing the mind to what matters, in the right way, at the right time. But for attention to be wow, it must first be open. You cannot respond to signals you don't allow in. And in the realm of career, wealth, and relational flow, the difference between almost and breakthrough often lies in whether or not you caught the signal, whether or not you heard what life was trying to tell you. From a Feng Shui standpoint, the ears are also linked to career and reputation. On a symbolic face map, the ears sit on the vertical axis of decision and public identity. When blocked, these areas dull. When opened even slightly, awareness improves. So how do you apply this practically? It doesn't mean cutting your hair. It doesn't mean exposing your ears completely or altering your style. It means this: creating a gesture of openness. Tuck one side behind the ear, especially when in meetings or important conversations. Wear styles that allow air and light to touch the area just behind the jaw. If you wear earrings, use them consciously as markers of presence, not decoration, but vibration. Sound is energy. The earlobe, especially in acupuncture theory, is a microcosm of the entire body. Stimulating this area, even gently, has ripple effects through posture, breath, and awareness. You can also use this as a daily check-in. Each morning when you brush your hair or tie it back, what am I willing to receive today? Not grab, not chase, but receive. Let your ears hear that question. Let your hands signal openness. There is no need for full exposure. You don't have to perform receptivity. You just have to remove the mute button from your energetic channel. Let the world speak to you. Let opportunity find your open ear. And if you're not sure whether this applies to you, try this. Go one day with both ears fully exposed, while working, walking, engaging. Notice what changes. Notice what enters your field. Then go back to full coverage. See what's different. You might be surprised how much wisdom is waiting at the edge of your awareness. And all it needed was a place to land. Let your ears do their quiet work. Let them listen, not just to what is said, but to what wants to be said. Because often the message that changes your life is already close, but it can't be heard if you've blocked the way in. Section 4, hair hygiene and energy purification. We often treat hair as a personal choice: cut, color, styling, texture. But beyond the mirrors and shampoo labels, there's a deeper layer that is rarely acknowledged in daily life: hair as a conductor of energy. In both Buddhist and Feng Shui traditions, the crown of the head is more than just the topmost point of the body. It is where the seen and unseen meet, where heaven chi descends, where our breath completes its arc upward, where spirit rests closest to the sky. And like any sacred portal, what surrounds it matters. Hair, when clean, nourished, and alive, amplifies energy. But when it is unwashed, greasy, or neglected, it does the opposite. It becomes a sponge for stagnation. It holds old signals, tired thoughts, and latent heaviness. And in subtle but cumulative ways, this blocks clarity. It disrupts interaction. It repels, not in a judgmental way, but in a vibrational way. Others don't feel drawn in. They feel unclear. The space around you dulls, not because of smell or style, but because the field you're transmitting is fogged. In Feng Shui, we know this principle well. The state of your entrance determines what enters your life. If your front door is cluttered, squeaky, or hard to open, abundance hesitates. Opportunity waits. Guests pause. Not because the house is unworthy, but because the signal is confused. In the same way, if your hair is left in a state of stagnation, greasy roots, dandruff, musty oils, it sends a subtle message to the universe. I'm holding what is old. And when that message is consistent, new energy, including financial opportunity, is less likely to settle. But this teaching isn't about hygiene for appearance. It's about purification as energetics. In Buddhist ethics, especially within the monastic code, there is a concept that translates loosely as cleanliness as field. The body is seen as the first altar. The way it is maintained, groomed, composed, is not for vanity. It is a gesture of clarity, a reminder that what is clear reflects clarity back, and what is clouded confuses both self and other. There's a quiet story shared in Theravada circles about a monk who bathed not for the heat or relief, but to refresh his karma. When asked why he was so consistent in his hair care, though he had only a shaven head, he replied, "Because others see me through it." The same can be said of anyone living in society. Your head is your first signal. Your hair, its silent frame. When it is fogged with old oils, sweat, or fatigue, people feel it before they realize it. Let's bring this into modern life. A man named Thomas, working in finance in New York City, began to notice something peculiar. In meetings, colleagues would look past him, not at him. Clients would respond to emails, but rarely linger in conversation. He wasn't being ignored, just bypassed. His ideas didn't land, his presence didn't settle. At first, he thought it was his tone, his phrasing, but a friend, more attuned to energetic observation, mentioned something different. "You always look like you've just come from yesterday." The comment was unsettling, but it landed. He looked at his routine. He had developed a habit of evening showers, sleeping with damp hair, waking and heading straight to work. His hair was rarely fully dry, never brushed in the morning. It looked neat, but flat, dim, slightly heavy around the scalp. At first, he resisted change. He wasn't doing anything wrong, but eventually he began shifting his grooming into morning hours, between 5:30 and 6 o'clock a.m. Traditionally known in Chinese medicine as the rise of yang energy. He used warm water, took a full breath before touching his head, and chose to dry and comb his hair slowly, not as performance, but as awareness. The change was not immediate, but within weeks, his colleagues lingered more often. Eye contact improved. He was invited to collaborate on a new account. He described it this way: "I felt less invisible, not because I dressed differently, but because I stopped sending the message of leftover energy." This is what hair hygiene does when approached as energy care. It cleans not just the surface, but the signal. From a Buddhist standpoint, this reflects the deeper truth. The outer reflects the inner, and the inner shapes the world. So how might you engage with this? Not as a burden, but as a new layer of awareness. Start with water. The act of washing your hair should be treated as a renewal. Even if it's quick, let the water have time to touch your scalp. Warm, not scalding. Let it meet the crown, called Baihui in Chinese energetic anatomy, a convergence point of all the body's major meridians. This point is sacred. It deserves clarity. Then the method. Use your fingers, not just your palms. Let them massage gently, as if tending a garden that holds your thoughts. Let them say, "Here I clear," Here I open. And then, the drying. Don't tie wet hair, don't sleep with it damp. These are practical steps, yes, but also energetic. Wet hair traps yin. If allowed to linger during the night, it anchors heaviness into your field. Many who sleep with wet hair wake up foggy, anxious. Not because of illness, but because qi was dampened when it should have been free. Instead, towel dry gently, air dry when possible, or use low heat, mindful not to fry or disturb the crown. Let the drying become part of the ritual, a quiet act of rebalancing, a bridge between water and wind. The tools matter too. Use natural combs, wood, horn, or bamboo. These materials do not steal charge from your field. Plastic and metal, while common, can create static, not just physically, but energetically. A wooden comb used with intention acts like a tuning fork. Each stroke aligns, each pass clarifies. One Buddhist lay practitioner described her morning combing as a mantra. With each stroke, I clear the fog. With each breath, I return to presence. And then intention. The final layer is not technique, but tone. When you touch your hair, what is the quality of your mind? Are you rushing? Are you judging? Or are you present, even for one breath? Say to yourself, if nothing else, clean hair, clear path. It's not superstition, it's training. Your body listens to repetition. Your energy follows your words. Even oils and treatments can carry meaning. If you use products, bless them. Whisper a word before applying. May this nourish, not mask. That phrase alone can turn a product into a ritual. And finally, observe the results. Not instantly, but over days, weeks. Notice if your conversations change, if people linger more, if ideas feel easier to articulate, if decisions feel lighter to make. These are the subtle signs of energy alignment. Not fanfare, just flow. Because when your crown is clean, heaven has somewhere to land. And when heaven lands, clarity follows. So care for your hair, not for fashion, but for field, for breath, for presence. Because purification is not about being pure, it's about being receptive. And that begins at the top. Section 5, frizzy or damaged hair, the leaking field. Among all the subtle signs of energy loss in the body, few are as overlooked and as revealing as the state of one's hair. You can learn a great deal about someone's internal field not by how styled or colored their hair is, but by how it feels when the wind touches it, or how it looks in natural light. Frizziness, brittleness, split ends, chronic dryness, these aren't merely cosmetic frustrations. In traditional energy systems, they are signals, messages, indicators that something within the field of the body is fragmented, and that energy, like water through a cracked bowl, may be leaking out faster than it can be restored. This is especially true when we consider wealth, because in Feng Shui and Buddhist-influenced energetic systems, abundance doesn't just flow towards you. It needs to be held, grounded, contained. And containment is only possible when the vessel is whole. Frizzy, damaged hair may not be the source of wealth and stability, but it often runs parallel to it. Not because hair creates luck, but because it reflects how luck is carried. Let's start with the symbolism. Hair is part of the body's outermost layer of energy expression, just beyond skin, but still very much alive. It's made of keratin, yes, but it is also the last echo of what the body nourished internally. The state of your hair is the visible footprint of your recent rhythms, how you've eaten, rested, hydrated, and moved. And when the hair is frayed, when it is constantly dry, tangled, or broken, it reflects more than just damage. It reveals dispersion. It reveals a field that is too porous to hold fortune. In Buddhist analogies, there's an image that is often used to describe scattered mind, a cracked bowl. When the bowl is whole, it can carry water, offer tea, receive blessings. But when it is chipped, just slightly, everything you try to fill it with seeps away. Slowly, yes, but consistently. And soon you find yourself wondering, why despite all my effort, do things keep slipping through? This is the leaking field, not because you're doing something wrong, but because something inside you is not being tended deeply enough to hold what is good. Let's bring this into contemporary life. Marianne was a mid-level executive in a consulting firm, smart, experienced, highly qualified. She managed multi-million-dollar budgets for clients, but somehow couldn't manage her own. At home, her finances always felt unstable. Not dire, but uncertain. Her pay was generous, her spending was modest, but her savings barely moved. And more than that, her sense of financial trust, her own confidence with money, was constantly wavering. Her health wasn't in crisis, but it was frayed. She skipped breakfast, lived on caffeine. Her cycles were irregular, her sleep was inconsistent, and her hair, once shiny and full, had become dull, thin, and draped by. She didn't think much of it, just blamed stress, bought a serum, tried a different shampoo, but none of it held, and neither did her clarity. After a conversation with a friend who practiced Chinese medicine, something clicked. The friend didn't offer judgment, just an image. You're trying to pour fortune into a basket, but the basket isn't woven yet. The metaphor stuck. Marianne began not with money, but with nourishment. Small things, real breakfast, warm water in the morning, an earlier bedtime. She began oiling her hair not as a routine, but as a message. You are being sealed, you are being held. Over 6 months, the texture of her hair changed, slowly, gradually. Then her sense of decision-making improved. She negotiated a freelance contract on the side that added a consistent savings stream. Her budget stabilized, not because she got better at it, but because her nervous system calmed enough to hold decisions with steadiness. She later said, "When my hair felt dry, I didn't realize it was my life that was thirsty." This is the reality of frizz. It's not about humidity, it's about fragmentation. About chi that is no longer circling back inward. It rises, it escapes, but it doesn't return. And hair, especially at the ends, is the register of that departure. In Feng Shui, frayed forms symbolize broken channels, a curtain that tears, a rug with worn edges, a plant with withered tips. These aren't just neglected, they are signs that flow has been interrupted. The same applies to the hair. Split ends are not only a result of poor care, they reflect energy that reached the edge and had nowhere else to go. It split, it fractured, it became loss. So what can you do? First, understand that healing hair is not cosmetic, it's karmic. Not in the sense of punishment or reward, but in the deeper meaning of karmic clarity, intention made visible. If your life is scattered, your energy cannot hold wealth. And if your hair is scattered, it is reminding you of that. Second, smooth your hair as a practice, not just of grooming, but of returning. So wooden combs, preferably wide tooth and made from sandalwood or bamboo. These materials ground energy. Each time you comb, do so slowly. Start from the ends, then move higher. Let it be an act of repair. Don't pull, don't rush. Think of it as sealing your field, saying, "And I am returning what is mine." Third, oil is medicine. In Ayurveda, oiling the hair is not luxury, it is prevention. It is considered one of the 7 daily purifications. Use sesame oil, coconut oil, or amla. Not slathered, but warmed in palms and applied with fingers that speak gentleness. Let it absorb before bed. Let it say, "You are safe to hold." Fourth, don't sleep with open, tangled hair. Just as you wouldn't leave your door swinging overnight, don't let your crown disperse while you dream. Tie it lightly or braid it gently. This is not superstition, it's energetic containment. The same principle you use when sealing a jar or covering a pot before rest. What you gather, you protect. Fifth, observe what improves. Not just in texture, but in tone. Do you feel more certain? Do conversations flow more smoothly? Do you remember things better? This is the reweaving of your field. And yes, it begins with hair, because hair is memory, hair is boundary, hair is the breath that never left. And when you tend to it, you are not being vain, you are being aware. Buddhist insight reminds us that the outer always reflects the inner. When surfaces become smooth, often it is because inner confusion has cleared. When surfaces remain tangled, often it is because our intentions are still contradictory. This is not judgment, it is map. Frizzy hair, scattered budget, fuzzy mind, they may all be telling the same story. Some part of your chi is trying to return, but doesn't know where to land. Be that landing. seal the field because you don't need more money. You need to hold what's already trying to stay. And sometimes it starts at the ends. Section 6, timing your haircuts. Karma in motion. There's a moment just before the scissors meet the strand when something invisible shifts. Most people don't feel it. But if you pay attention, not with superstition, but with presence, you'll notice that a haircut isn't just physical. It is energetic punctuation, a release, a declaration, a karmic reset. And the timing of that release matters. Hair, as we've explored, is not inert. It grows from the scalp, yes, but symbolically it grows from memory. It is the living record of recent time. The meals you've eaten, the sleep you've missed, the emotions you've carried. It absorbs stress, holds vibration, and reflects rhythm. When you cut it, you are not simply refreshing your style. You are editing your energetic timeline. You are choosing what ends and what continues. In Buddhist imagery, shaving the head is often associated with renunciation. Monks and nuns do not shave their heads to look holy. They do it to mark release, to say, what was is no longer. I begin again. The gesture is not aesthetic, it is karmic. It is the bodily equivalent of turning the page. But what happens when we cut hair at the wrong time? The answer is subtle but real. Energy, like farming, depends on seasons. There is a time to plant, a time to wait, a time to cut back, and a time to harvest. When hair is cut during periods of emotional instability, grief, rage, heartbreak, panic, the act of cutting becomes entangled with that state. The energetic imprint of collapse is carried into the new growth. It doesn't curse the hair, but it lingers. The field remembers. Think of it like this. If you prune a tree while it is drishpai, exhausted and undernourished, the new branches do not grow strong. They grow tentative, incomplete. The timing was off, not because of bad luck, but because the tree was not ready to let go. The same applies to your body, your energy, your scalp. In Chinese medicine, the scalp is linked to multiple meridians: bladder, gallbladder, governing vessel. It is a converging point. When the hair is touched, cut, or pulled, especially with force or during vulnerable states, the nervous system records it. The signal sent to the field is not just change, but interruption. That's why many people report strange dreams, headaches, or emotional aftershocks after haircuts taken at the wrong time. Let's ground this with a story. Andre, a creative director based in Toronto, had always used haircuts as a reset. But one day, after an intense argument with his partner, he stormed out and went straight to a salon. The decision was impulsive. The style he chose was aggressive, shaved close on the sides, tight on top. When he looked in the mirror, he felt momentarily powerful. But that night he couldn't sleep. His dreams were fragmented. His mood over the following week was erratic, not from regret, but from disruption. He later reflected that the haircut had locked in the emotional state he was in. The style became not a renewal, but a freeze frame. He wore his conflict for months. Contrast this with Lena, a mother of two who waited until the day after her divorce paperwork was finalized. After mediation was done, the house was sold, and the farewell was clean. She didn't rush. She took a quiet morning, ate something nourishing, then walked to a local salon and cut off 8 inches of hair she had carried for years. It wasn't dramatic, but it was complete. She left the salon lighter, not just because of weight, but because of release. The act aligned with clarity, with ripeness, and her new phase began with softness. This is the difference between cutting during collapse and cutting after completion. In Buddhist cosmology, karma is not punishment, it is rhythm. If you cut your hair during internal chaos, you invite that rhythm into your next phase. If you wait for clarity, even if only partial, you cut from steadiness, and that steadiness becomes your new starting point. There's also the matter of time of day. In Feng Shui, time is not just clock-based, it's elemental. The early hours of the day, from sunrise until late morning, are considered yang time, the hours of upward movement, clarity, alertness, and cosmic ascent. This is the ideal time for any kind of energetic reset, including haircuts. The body is awake, the qi is clear, the nervous system is primed for change. In contrast, nighttime, especially after sunset, is yin time. It is a time for quiet, restoration, and internal movement. Cutting hair during this period, especially after 9 p.m., introduces disruption into the field. You're disturbing the crown during hours meant for descent. Many traditional cultures discourage nighttime haircuts, not because of myth, but because of respect for circadian integrity. The scalp, like the soil, should not be turned while it sleeps. So what does this mean practically? Begin with awareness. Before booking a haircut or even trimming your own hair at home, pause. Ask yourself, am I acting from clarity or from emotion? Is this timing clean? Is this decision whole? If not, wait. Even a day or two can shift your field. Next, consider your inner season. Are you in a phase of grief, transition, anger? If so, this may not be the time for a dramatic shift. Or if you do cut, do it with softness, with slowness, with breath. Let each snip be an exhale, a letting go that asks nothing in return. Choose daylight hours. Mid-morning is ideal. Around 9-11 a.m., let light fill the salon or your bathroom. Let the sun witness your shift. This isn't ritual, it's alignment. You're synchronizing your body's change with the greater field. Bring intention. Before the cut, hold your hair. Whisper silently, "Thank you for carrying what you carried." And after the cut, gather the strands gently. Even if you don't keep them, don't toss them carelessly. Treat them like old stories. Honor them. Then let them go. And finally, observe what emerges. Your hair may grow back differently, not in texture, but in tone. Your thoughts may feel lighter. Your speech may change pace. These are signs that you timed the transition well. You didn't escape, you evolved, because cutting hair is karma in motion. It is not the end of something. It is the transfer of one pattern into another. And how you enter that transfer, hurried or holy, distracted or clear, shapes what the next pattern becomes. So take your time. Let your haircuts become sacred punctuation. Let them mark not reaction, but readiness. And when you do cut, cut with presence. Because what falls away is not just dead weight, it's the old you returning to earth, so the new you can stand rooted. Final reflection, what your hair is teaching you. There's something quietly revolutionary about looking in the mirror and seeing not just a face, but a field, a presence, a pattern of energy rising gently from the crown of your head and whispering, "I am still here." This journey we've taken through the forehead, the ends, the ears, the hygiene, the damage, and the timing was never about hair, not really. It was about attention, alignment, the small, unspoken ways we either stay connected or let ourselves scatter. Hair is personal, yes, but in energetic frameworks, it is also relational. It relates you to the sky, to the people who see you, to the space you walk through, and most of all, to the version of yourself that is either ready to hold fortune or not quite yet. We began with the forehead, the bright hall, where light must land for clarity to emerge. Covered heavily, the path forward dims, but when open, the chi has somewhere to go. Decision-making becomes lighter, not because life gets easier, but because the mind is less entangled. Then we explored the ends of the hair, the direction of the strand. When it flips outward, energy scatters. When it curves inward, energy gathers. Like incense smoke curling back into itself, your curls, too, can become inward invitations, a quiet containment of power. We listen to the ears, not just biologically, but symbolically. In Buddhist practice, the ears are receivers of wisdom, especially unexpected wisdom. Hair that covers them entirely sends a signal, "I am not available to hear." And that signal over time becomes behavior. But when even one ear opens, something begins to return. Insight, subtle truth, the murmurs of possibility. Then came hygiene, the simple, unromantic, yet powerful act of cleansing. Not for fashion, but for flow. A clean crown is a receptive crown. When your scalp is muddied, your energy has no clarity. But when water meets skin, intention meets ki. Even a comb can become a prayer, a stroke of order in a world of overwhelm. We explored damaged hair, not as flaw, but as flag. Split ends are not shameful. They are signals, indicators of inner scatter, outer depletion, and often an unconscious disregard for the vessel trying to carry you. But with gentleness, through oil, ritual, and slower mornings, the field can be resealed, and with it, your ability to hold on to the good things. And finally, we arrived at time itself. When you cut your hair matters. The energy you are in while trimming your ends, coloring your roots, or shaving your scalp stays. Hair remembers. If you cut during collapse, the new growth carries that collapse. If you cut it after clarity, the new strand grows from stillness. So do not rush. Mark your timing with care. Let your transitions be rooted in readiness. So now, pause. This isn't about fashion. It never was. This is about energy. Hair is the highest point of your body. It is the first thing the wind touches. It is where your thoughts rise and your spirit meets sky. If the rest of your life is out of order, your sleep, your goals, your finances, start here. Start with the scalp, the roots, the curve of a strand, because sometimes the way you treat your hair is the way you treat your clarity. Ask yourself, when was the last time you combed your hair with reverence? When was the last time you touched it, not with criticism, but with attention? When was the last time you noticed what direction it naturally falls, and whether that direction supports or scatters you? These are not self-care questions. These are energetic design questions. Your hair carries your recent days, your stress, your food, your rest. It is your oldest breath, suspended in form. So if this reflection has offered even one small shift, one pause, one oh, then something sacred has already begun. And now I invite you to leave your own imprint below, not just a comment, a signal. You can write, I choose to care for my energy from the top down. Or you can write what is true for you. Your words are not for the algorithm. They are for your own field. To mark the moment when you began to treat your crown not as decoration, but as direction. If this video brought a new clarity into view, I invite you to gently support this space. A like, a share, a subscription. Not because I asked, but because you are ready to hear more from the part of yourself that already knows. At New Day Mindfulness, we don't chase trends. We trace energy. We honor the ancient design that lives in your breath, your space, and your body. And we remember, the way you touch your hair is the way you touch your life. May it be calm, may it be conscious, may it be clear.